When we see in the news that an attack has happened on innocent people, many Muslims will say this has nothing to do with Islam. If that's true, then where do so-called Islamic terrorists get the inspiration from? The Book of Mormon? Wissam Haddad, aka Abu Usaid, is no stranger to the Australian legal system. Despite being dubbed an ISIS sympathizer and preaching about the final solution for Jews in the form of jihad, he doesn't seem to care what anyone thinks of him for talking like this, because he believes that this is the correct form of Islam. Wissam Haddad is a piece of work. He has a history of being involved with the law that's so long I'm not even sure where to begin. If one thing is clear though, he's not going to back down no matter how many court appearances he makes, backlash he gets from inciting violence against others, and he's going to pose a risk to not only himself for the foreseeable future, but impressionable young people as well. Haddad, at the time of this video being made, has not been tied to any terror attacks committed by himself, but he has inspired others to carry out attacks, and that's what I want to discuss today. Haddad is narcissistic, lacks empathy, and believes that there's a hierarchy in society, with Muslims like him at the top and people like Jews at the bottom.
Nobody come and tell me, but brother, this is the Zionists, it's not really the Jews. There was no Zionists at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. It was Jews, Yahud, and they were addressed this way. And I want to say, you know this, my dear brothers and sisters, that even these ultra-Orthodox Jews that you see today that are against Israel and they hate the Zionists, we really know that from what we just mentioned, that they don't really have a unity. But these ultra-Orthodox Jews, who do you think they're waiting for? They're still waiting for their Messiah to come. And when that Messiah comes, they're still going to fight the Muslims. They're just not fighting the Muslims now. So don't be fooled to think that these people are still your friends.
In the past, he made this wild statement about calling Jews the descendants of monkeys and pigs. Where did he get that from, you wonder?
The Muslims of Palestine cry out to be saved from the descendants of pigs and monkeys, but no one responds. The issue of Palestine will never end with humanitarian aid alone. As I said, my dear brothers, we're known to be worshippers at night and warriors by day. So let us follow their way, as their way is the best of way.
Haddad hates Jews so much that he has labeled jihad as a final solution for Jews. I wonder where he heard that from. You're going to see how bad it can get. Radical Islam rears its ugly head up over and over again, and someone needs to do something about it. Let's get into it.
Before I get into the article, I wanted to go over some of the highlights of Haddad's life as a public figure. Haddad has worn many different hats in his career as a jihadi hate preacher. At one point, he was a principal for an informal Islamic school Saturday program at Bankstown's Al Medina Dawah Center that would teach children from age 5 to age 12. Haddad has a lot to teach children, apparently. It makes sense why he'd want to oversee an Islamic Saturday school for children. He knows a lot about New Year's Eve, for instance, describing it as a celebration of foreskin.
So in essence, and I'm sorry to say this, but what you are celebrating is a piece of foreskin.
I am hoping that the kids at this school did not have to make any sort of crafts for this holiday. Another thing to know about Haddad is that he likes to make friends. Although these friends tend to die because, well, they are involved in terrorist attacks, and we all know how the fate of those guys usually plays out. So with that being said, Haddad will have to constantly make new friends, as his old ones don't tend to last very long. No pun intended. Khalid Sharoof was one of his friends. He was a jihadi who converted to Islam, then joined ISIS. He was known to post photos of himself with severed heads and dead and mutilated bodies. He was killed in an airstrike near Raqqa in August 2017, along with his 2 young sons. Sharoof was the first person to have his Australian citizenship revoked under new anti-terror laws passed in 2015. Haddad's had no issue making friends with terrorists, since he held the same vile views as them. There's really no need for icebreakers with connections like this, which leads me to his next known friend, Another terrorist named Mohammed El Omar.
Yeah, because I'll say that because even then, it was reported very, very early on when I was talking to your brother and to Khalid, rahmatullah alayhi. And I'd say to Khalid, for example, do you want me to say anything to the news here? Because once I was sitting in front of a reporter and he goes, yeah, tell him this or tell him that.
Mohammed El Omar had a close connection with Sharif. El Omar was not only his best friend, but the husband of Sharif's 13-year-old daughter Zainab. I guess El Omar wanted to keep Muhammad's tradition of child marriage alive by marrying a child himself. El Omar was killed 3 months into his marriage to Zainab, leaving her behind to become a single, widowed mother to his child until she married another one of her father's friends, followed by having more children. Like his friend Sharif, El Omar also liked posing with severed heads as well. As you can see, Wissam Haddad kept some interesting company. But that's not the only thing that's intriguing about him. He also has a lot to say, preaching hate wherever he goes. For years, actually. He's preached hate longer than most people have worked at a single job. Decades. I guess the industry of jihadi hate hasn't been hit by AI yet. So his job is pretty secure. I am sure the pay isn't great or worth it, though. He's not well liked by most of society, but he's okay with that. He has his loyal band of followers and friends, both alive and dead, so he never truly goes away and gets outcasted by Muslim society. Cut off one head, grow 3 more. No pun intended. In this article by The Australian, Wissam Haddad has a new bone to pick, this time criticizing any Muslim who works with the government and organizations that are trying to shut down hate-preaching jihadis like him. This is what he said. Jihadist preacher Wissam Haddad has accused mosques tied to one of the nation's top Islamic organizations that participate in countering violent extremism of betraying the Muslim community and preaching a watered-down version of Islam. Mr. Haddad, in a recent series of videos posted to Instagram, denounced mosques and the Australian National Imams Council that run de-radicalization programs under the title of social cohesion and security. He also singled out mosques tied to the ANIC that are involved in countering violent extremism, claiming that such programs amount to the promotion of a watered-down and government-approved version of Islam. Most people want the world to be a better place, meaning there's no more terrorist attacks. If you're Wissam Haddad, the idea of terrorists no longer existing is so bothersome that he feels the need to endlessly preach about it at the minbar. Just a quick pause. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. Now, back to the video. The life of a terrorist seems to be a short one, and one that is of no value to oneself, society, or anyone really. Islam is man-made by a 7th century caravan robber that made a career out of being a prophet, hardly the type of person anyone should want to follow, let alone give their life for. Wissam Haddad is bothered by people becoming de-radicalized. He sees anyone or anything that stands in the way of Muslims becoming jihadis as quote-unquote programs to promote kufr, aka disbelief in Allah. Listen to this. Mr. Haddad argued that mosques that engage with the government, accept public funding, or promote interfaith dialogue and democratic participation fall into this category, and therefore lose their legitimacy as true places of worship under Islamic law. How many of such places call the youth to interfaith, give fatwa, rules to the youth, to go and join police, to join the military? How many of them have been compromised with so-called government grants in the leadership of such masajid, mosques, external influences that accept money or they accept control in exchange for information on the community and individuals of the community when they run to promote programs of kufr, disbelief, such as countering violent extremism, when they run de-radicalization programs under the title of social cohesion and security, and then report back to the disbelievers when they preach a watered-down version of Islam, a government-approved version that fits the criteria of Masjid Dirar. If Muslims engage with people outside of their faith, deconstruct this extreme mindset taught to them by people like Wissam Haddad, they become disbelievers. I mean, is it really a bad thing that this happens to Muslims? It sounds like, if anything, these programs are serving their intended purpose. It sounds like Haddad is saying that violent extremism can only stay alive if people never have a chance to think for themselves or achieve anything of value in life. Almost like this rhetoric is the only form of Islam that anyone should be listening to and abiding by.
If you are anything but a Muslim, you're a loser. And the only way to be a winner is to be a Muslim.
One person that did not escape Haddad's jihadi mind virus conditioning was a man named Naveed Akram. Naveed, along with his father, Sajid Akram, were the two men responsible for the killing of 14 people and injuring 39 with shotguns and sniper rifles at a Hanukkah celebration at Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia, in December 2025. Prior to this attack, in November of 2025, the father and son both traveled to the Philippines for military training so they could learn how to carry out proper terrorist attacks. Naveed was a follower of Haddad's extremist teachings, and it's clear that they had a significant impact on his beliefs, worldview, and ultimately the normalization of killing others, Jews specifically. At the time of this video being made, Naveed faces multiple charges, including commit terrorist attack, murder, attempted murder, discharge of a firearm with intent, causing explosives to be placed in or near building, conveyance or public place, and last but not least, display prohibited terrorist organization symbols. 2 of those charges alone carry a life sentence in prison. Naveed's affinity towards extremist views date back to when he was a teen. Listen to this craziness. The ABC has uncovered videos showing Naveed Akram proselytizing with a related street dawah group in mid-2019 when he was 17. In one, he tells schoolboys that the law of Allah is more important than anything else you have to do. Work, school, I can't stress it enough. In another, he says, God will reward actions taken in His cause. Muslim community leaders stressed that those comments were far from radical, but weeks later, police raided an IS cell involving members of that same street dawah network. This rabbit hole goes so deep, guys, but it's so clear at this point that Wissam Haddad, so far, is accomplishing what he's been preaching to the youth for decades. Naveed isn't the only person whose mind has been radicalized by Wissam. Listen to this next part of the article. Among those arrested was Isaac El Matari, an associate of Naveed Akram, who was later jailed for 7 years for declaring himself the Australian commander of IS and plotting terrorist attacks. ASIO began its investigation into Naveed Akram months later, in October 2019. According to Mr. Albanese, counterterrorism officials have told ABC the agency was also concerned about Naveed Akram's association with an IS youth recruiter. Yusuf was later jailed for nearly 4 years for encouraging Australian minors to launch attacks while acting as a youth leader at Mr. Haddad's prayer center and a street preacher alongside Naveed Akram. After his release, he re-emerged publicly in August, when he was photographed waving a black flag associated with jihadist groups at an anti-Gaza war protest on the Sydney Harbour Bridge. Wissam Haddad's radical teachings is the gift that keeps on giving, isn't it?
It is worse to say to somebody, Merry Christmas, than to say to somebody who was committing zina, drinking alcohol, gambling, doing all those things that are major sin. It'd be better, not that you should do it, it'd be better saying happy drinking than to say to somebody Merry Christmas.
Naveed and his father's crimes are not an isolated incident, not just another, this is not true Islam terrorist attack. Naveed was an at-risk teen when he started street dawah at the age of 17. Yet, Muslims did not take his comments about God will reward actions taken in His cause seriously. We don't have to look very far to see where Naveed learned this from. He learned it from Wissam, and Wissam learned it from the Islamic sources themselves. Let's start with the Quran itself. In Quran 474, Allah says this, "So let those who fight in the cause of Allah, who sell the life of this world for the hereafter, and he who fights in the cause of Allah is killed or achieves victory. We will bestow upon him a great reward. Muslims say that Naveed talking about Allah rewarding those for action taken in his cause not being a cause for concern must have never read the Quran, or they are lying. To me, it's clear what Naveed meant, despite speaking somewhat cryptically. Here is another hadith that teaches Muslims yet again what Allah's quote-unquote cause is about. Listen to this. Narrated Abu Musa, a man came to the Prophet and said, "A man fights for pride and haughtiness, another fights for bravery, and another fights for showing off. Which of these cases is in Allah's cause?" The Prophet said, "The one who fights that Allah's word, Islam, should be superior, fights in Allah's cause." There's that word cause again. The Quran speaks about fighting in the cause of Allah, and the Hadith talks about fighting in Allah's cause. Is it just a mistake, a slip of the tongue, that Naveed specifically used the word cause and the rewards of said cause in his street dawah? Absolutely not. If this isn't enough to convince you, there's more. Over and over again, Muhammad specifically uses the word cause, and that's not by accident. Belief in Allah and jihad in the cause of Allah, the mighty and sublime. Going out in the morning in the cause of Allah or in the evening is better than the world and what is in it. The Messenger of Allah said, "None of the people of paradise who wish to return to the world except for the martyr, who indeed would love to return to the world, saying that he would love to be killed 10 times in Allah's cause because of what he has seen of the honor that he has given him." The cause, the cause, the cause. We see this over and over again. Muslims will try and say that jihad means struggle, the struggle to wake up for Fajr or the struggle to quit watching porn. And while it does have the meaning of struggle, the stronger meaning is physical battle.
We can't take away from the fact, first and foremost, that jihad is definitely part of our deen. And as Muslims, we should never ever shy away from this. And yes, there may be types of jihad, but of the peak of this jihad is that which the Messenger Muhammad ﷺ spoke about, and I'll read the hadith soon. And that is fighting in the path of Allah Azza wa Jal. A physical fight, not the fighting of the nafs. Although your nafs is needed in order for your physical to go out in the path of Allah. So we're not talking about the struggle of the nafs, we're talking about the physical jihad, the physical struggling against the enemies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to make the word of Allah Azza wa Jal the highest.
When Muhammad says in an authentic Sahih hadith that the martyrs would want to come back and be killed 10 times over because of what Allah gave him to die, it's clear what people like Wissam Haddad and Naveen Akram are saying, whether they preach on the street or behind the minbar, and the outcome of these teachings is more violence and innocent lives lost. What does that mean for the rest of us? It means that we need to understand that Islam is a source of violent ideas and call it out for what it is. We need to be aware that it's dangerous for the rest of us, and while milder forms exist, we need to call out the worst parts of this ideology. If we continue doing this, we will have a better, happier, more peaceful world. On that I end. Thanks for watching. Special shout out to our patrons who continue to make it possible to talk about these difficult things. They are the real heroes behind the channel. If you'd like to join our cause, the link is below. This is Mrs. Friendly Ex-Muslim signing out.